All right, hey everybody, and welcome to game mechanics and how exactly Worlds Adrift works. This is not going to be necessarily extremely comprehensive, but it'll be a bit of a how-to for people that may have played in the Island Creator just a little bit, not moved around a lot, or people that haven't played the game at all. This is meant for Alpha 5.2, I think it'll be, starting Thursday for the big stress test. So if there are any new updates to the alpha after this one, the mechanics may be different than how I'm explaining them. But yeah, let's get started. The controls are relatively simple. You see in the top right, WASD, right-click, holding right-click will allow you to aim your grapple, or you can just right-click and it will grapple wherever the middle of your screen is. Left click will just use whatever you have in your hand. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are a few base tool systems. One would be your salvaging, where if you hold left click, it'll charge up and then begin zapping, and any resources in front of you that your cursor is on, I believe you will mine. Number 2 is a repair tool, and if you have any ship parts that you hover over in the middle of your screen, it'll just glow green, or it will glow with a normal outline. If it has a normal outline, that means it's full health. If it's green, that means you have the option to repair it, and holding left click will kind of shoot a repairing beam, and then the chat will tell you if you have the correct resources and or how many resources you've used to fully repair it. At this time, if you shoot your repair tool into an object that is already full health, it will tell you that the object is too broken to be fixed. Just ignore that. If it's on your ship, it's obviously not broken, and if it has no green outline, it's full health. Number 3 is lift mode, and that's what allows you to select and place normal ship parts that are laying around on the ground directly onto your ship hull. Number 4 is your knowledge tool, your forge scanner. That will be used to shoot into holes, ship holes, ship parts, and it will tell you their weight, and depending on the type of part, it'll kind of show you different bars for its power, its fuel efficiency, its overheat, things like that. Just statistics depending on the type of procedural chip part that you're using. You also have 5, 6, 7, and 8, which are areas that you can place usables. You cannot place resources into your hotbar. However, you can place usables like pistols, like torches, atlas lifters, bombs, things like that. Currently, anything in your hotbar obviously won't disappear, but since you can't place any resources there, no matter what, you will lose your resources upon death. You may still be left with whatever tools that you like to keep on yourself, so it would still be nice to make yourself a couple tools and stick them in that hotbar just to have them there so you don't ever have to make those again. Alright, part 2, this will be grappling. So the grapple is, as I mentioned earlier, pressing right-click, and then holding right-click will allow you to aim your cursor, and then your grapple will snap to wherever you let go. There's 2 ways to grapple from a point to another point. Way number 1 would be just, let's say you're attached to, let's attach to this fuel. If you just right-click anywhere else, you'll disconnect. Then you have to right-click again to reconnect to that area. So if you're flinging yourself, you have to double press to ungrapple and then re-grapple to the point you're looking at. The other way, the better way in my opinion, of grappling is if you're already grappled to an object and you're swinging, if you hold down right-click, your screen doesn't move, but it allows you to move your cursor. And I believe it immediately disconnects and then lets you kind of fling to wherever you're going, and then you can reconnect mid-air and fling around that new point. For instance, if I just grab the edge and grapple down a bit, I can jump and then re-grapple to that new point and re-grapple. Please note that if you're moving at a high enough velocity and you come into contact with another object, you will take some damage, and if you're moving too fast and you collide directly with an object, your screen may go slightly gray and your character will go limp. That's kind of a sort of ragdoll mode that will happen if something hits you too hard, or if you hit something else too hard. Currently, there's nothing you can do when you get hit. You'll stay grappled on unless you disconnect your grapple and then collide with a wall, which would mainly only happen if you hold right-click, fling yourself into a wall, and then you won't be able to right click. Also, there's occasional slight bugs that might come up where you might not be able to grapple for a while until you ragdoll yourself. So be careful where you're flinging to, and be careful when you want to let go of your grapple. Otherwise, you might collide with something before you're ready and plummet to your death. And there's not really much you can do once you're fallen low enough beneath an island, unless there's another island underneath you. But if you have any resources up here you've saved, etc., you lost them. So as you're grappling, I forgot to mention a few other things, like currently, if you're grappled onto a wall and you jump, you'll simply be flung off of the ground. However, if you're in mid-air and you press the jump button, it uses a sort of boost that flings you in the direction that you are currently being carried by their momentum, I believe, but disconnects your grapple. So it can kind of give you a bit of a boost if you're trying to, let's say, rappel over a lip face, crouch down, jump off, and then boost up. And, you know, that's kind of the best way for you to fling around lips. A lot of people will get caught on the lips until you actually start using the boost. The boost is a very important part. I believe its cooldown is like probably 1 or 2 seconds. It kind of sparks but doesn't do anything if you try to do it too soon. You will not disconnect and not boost. You simply will hear the sound, see the sparks, and nothing happens. So you're safe mashing spacebar until it works, but you might hit it at the wrong time and fling back into the lip and just tumble away again, etc. On its own, the boost can't give you enough speed to hurt yourself, but if you're moving fast enough, the boost will simply add on to that speed and fling you harder. So you could boost into a wall, moving at a speed that you weren't originally moving fast enough to take damage or be ragdolled. Alright, so next comes up knowledge and resources. As I mentioned in part 1, you can mine your resources by selecting one, holding down left click, waiting for it to charge, and then zapping whatever object you're looking at. Currently, the 3 types of resources are fuel, wood, and metal. If you want to collect any of those, you simply hold down left click, charge them up. It's relatively simple, however, it's nice to know kind of how each object works. For instance, fuel. When you start zapping it, your first shot will actually disconnect it from its spawn point, and it will roll away until it falls off the edge or you hit it 2 more times. It gives a total of 25 fuel. The first zap giving 8, the second zap giving 8, and I believe the third zap giving the last bit, which would be, 9? If you want to mine things like metal, it's a bit more of an active thing. So if you want to mine yourself some metal, you'll kind of find these large brown rocks with little cracks through them and chunks of rock all over it. You have to charge up your tool and then zap the rock to knock off the outer casing so you can actually see the metal that would be inside. And then you're kind of left with this, which is a few little different shaped white metal chunks sticking out of the core. And just zapping those will give you, I believe, 75 of whatever that nodes ore is. So each island has usually 2, but sometimes 3 different types of metal. It could be iron, aluminum, lead, etc. There's a very long list that I will post in the description. As you're mining, make sure that you don't actually zap the core, because that will break out a chunk of it. And that seems fine, but once you hit the core 2 or 3 times, it'll explode, completely disintegrate, and send a couple chunks outward and most of the metal outward as well. Not a lot of it will fall. You can be very careful with where you're mining, because I have actually had rocks explode into me from a friend mining next to me. And I believe we have had a few moments where mining stone will actually fling giant rocks back into the ship and damage or break a few ship parts. But, you know, be smart. Smart mining. You can't just, like, stand there with a pickaxe and hold left click and you found some shit. You gotta be active, you have to be smart, you have to make sure you know where you're zapping. If you zap the wrong places, well, you failed. Try again. And the last part is mining trees. So mining trees is relatively simple, except as you would expect, physics is a thing. So If I just try to mine this tree directly from the bottom, I might be safe. But there's a large chance that the tree will fall, depending on its shape. This is extremely dangerous because the tree can actually fall and land on your head, and in most scenarios, that is a one-shot kill. So I believe when I began playing this alpha with a friend, the first tree we mined killed him, sadly. He immediately respawned on the island. He was safe, but, you know. So the smartest way to mine a tree would be starting from the top, zapping out, and destroying that piece, because your first hit will simply cut it in a line in that area. The rest is relatively intuitive. You can mine directly from the top, break the piece, and then destroy it. Or if you want, you can mine from the bottom, have the thing collapse on the ground, and then just break it apart all over the ground. But on slopes, this might be not so smart because you will lose pieces of your wood tumbling down and over the side of the mountain or the island. As you are going about your life, you may find little bags. These are places where if a player dies, if any player dies in any place, it simply creates a bag at their location. The bag will still have normal physics, so if you're flying over the edge and you die in midair, that bag will fall down over the edge of the island or roll along the island, you know, to some random spot. So just kind of search the general area of where you died, because your bag may roll a lot farther than where you originally died. But as you can see, you can find quite a lot of stuff, quite a lot of loot. Some clothes, some shirts. These are just everyday things that other player or any single other player had found and lost upon dying. And apparently it wasn't important enough for him to try and get it back. There are a few different types of things that you can find just in chests and stuff that you would see here. Things, for instance, like helmets, like shirts, like pants. Those are just cool looking clothes. It's pretty fun to give yourself a bit of an interesting loadout with a large series of different types of clothing. So dress yourself up how you like. Other things that we found are codex pieces and blueprints. Codex pieces are just flavor text, but it's still pretty interesting. If you find codex, you don't actually have it. You actually have to right-click and collect it. If you already have the piece, you'll already have it. It won't consume. You could give it to someone else if they want flavor text. But it never hurts to just kind of try and consume every page that you can, because as you can see, you never know when you might not have that piece. And it's pretty fun to go into the flavor text and kind of read the civilizations and things, you know. It's very fun, I think. Lots of different types of metals and different types of wood. Different metals can be found in different nodes. As I've mentioned, different wood, I believe, can only be found in different chests. In my experience, you only ever receive cedar, or when you mine any normal trees on any island. Even if you see a palm tree, it's not going to give you palm wood, it's going to give you cedar. Blueprints are also things you can find. Sometimes you have a chance of finding just normal straight blueprints for things like the glider, the improbable flag, or things like the Gaben flag, which, yes, is a thing. And sometimes you'll find things like procedural blueprints for procedural engines, procedural wings, or procedural cannons. So if you have the blueprint, nothing will happen, obviously. But if you have it, new schematics learned. You can just pop in, tab, go to your schematics, and find assembly station, or sometimes you'll find multi-tool craftables like ammunition, utility things like gliders, explosives, things like that. Those are all found. You don't know those when you first start. You have to find all of those when you are just searching through chests. If I pop under decoration, I have the improbable flag. You can find a Gaben flag. Some pretty interesting things in here. And the reason it has a weight modifier, you might, depending on the types of resources you decide to make your ship parts out of, they may weigh more or less. The last resource-related thing that you can find, which is actually extremely important, is knowledge. These are found in little knowledge tomes, I believe we call them. These little metal, very distinctive things sticking out of the ground. I believe there's usually 2 per island. Sometimes you can find 3. That's about it. Every time you zap one, I believe it gives you 50 knowledge. If you have zapped it any time during that alpha, you cannot do it again. So there is a limit to the number of knowledge points that you can receive. However, it's 100 per island. And, you know, God knows how many islands there are in their massive world, right? A lot more than 5, 10, 50. Every time you inject your knowledge scanner into any of these knowledge things, they will give you 50 knowledge points, which you can find in the top left after hitting tab, going to knowledge, in the top left of your knowledge tree. First time you find any engines, cannons, or wing blueprints, you will open up a basic version of that field. And then every time that you put some knowledge points into it, you'll get a blueprint of that tier, and then fill up the bar for that tier. Once you fill it up enough, you'll unlock the next tier. So right now I have common wings. I decided to go into wings when I had played this a while ago. And of course it'll take more knowledge points per tier. You can go up common, uncommon, rare. The next ranks are pristine, exotic, and legendary. Currently, legendary ship parts can only be found in the wild, searching through chests. So you can only ever train up to exotic. However, I would recommend, if you're having a multi-man crew, telling one guy to go into wings, having one other guy go into cannons. Make sure that each person puts a large enough amount of points into a single area so that you can all kind of pool your exotic versions of each thing. So you could have an entire exotic ship instead of just having a bunch of pristine wings, pristine engines.